Mr. Vivek Tyagi is currently General Manager and Business Unit Embedded Business Unit of RP Tech. Vivek has about 30 years of semiconductor and storage industry experience at Western Digital, SanDisk, Freescale, Motorola, and he has played leadership roles in sales and marketing, business development, and application engineering. Vivek Tyagi is also the Vice Chairman of ISA. This panel has Mr. Naresh Rana, Director of Sales, WD, Mr. Sampath Raghavan, Mr. Kalpesh Chauhan, and Mr. Anup Chervatur, who are going to be part of the panel. I now hand it off to Mr. Vivek Tyagi to take the panel forward. Over to you, Vivek.
Hello, everybody. My name is Vivek Tyagi, and I'm your host for this panel discussion today, where we are discussing unprecedented data growth in embedded applications, how to harness this data for our benefit going forward. And I have esteemed guests, panelists today with us here. Let me introduce you to the panelists today. So first we have Anup Cheru, and Anup is a graduate of IIT Kharagpur, and he's currently the CTO for Hero Electronics, and he's part of the consumer IoT division. Anup has a semiconductor and embedded experience of about 25 years. He's been associated with semiconductor companies such as NXP, Entropic in the leadership roles, and in current role at Hero Electronics, he's focusing on AI-driven consumer electronic devices, which are focusing on security, surveillance, and automation.
Hi, everybody.
Welcome to this panel discussion, Anup.
Hi.
And thank you for joining us today.
Yeah.
Next panelist on our panel is Raghavan Sampath. Raghavan is presently working as Director of Business Development at MediaTek, a well-known semiconductor and embedded processor company. And his role currently focuses on proliferating the 5G technology, ensuring 4G technology reaches the masses, and driving various IoT applications such as fixed wireless access points, smart metering, telematics, fintech, security and surveillance, etc. Raghavan has over 20 years of experience in business development and sales in semiconductor industry. And in the past, he has worked at companies such as NXP Semiconductor, Freescale, and Texas Instrument in various roles. Welcome to the panel, Raghavan.
Thank you, Vivek. Good evening, everybody.
Next panelist, I like to welcome Kalpesh Kumar Chauhan. Kalpesh works at Vividian IoT and Vision BU as Senior Director. He's a versatile electronics product design expert with more than 25 years of experience in conceptualizing and development of microprocessor, DSP, and microcontroller-based hardware, products, systems, and solutions for various geographical markets such as US, Europe, and Asia. Welcome to the panel, Kalpesh.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Next on our panel discussion is I have Naresh Rana, who has over 20 years of sales and business development experience in embedded semiconductor and storage industry. Naresh is currently heading the sales and business development function at Western Digital, leading both embedded, OEM, and enterprise divisions. And previous to Western Digital, Naresh has worked at companies such as SanDisk, Freescale Semiconductor, and several other leading companies. Welcome to our panel discussion, Naresh.
Thank you. Hello, everyone.
Okay. And I'm your host for today. This is Vivek Tyagi. I also have about 30 years of semiconductor and storage industry experience, having worked with currently with Rashi Peripheral, but in the past at Western Digital, SanDisk, Freescale Semiconductor, Motorola, and Philips, etc. I'm also currently with the ISA office as Vice Chairman, and I have the pleasure of hosting all these esteemed experts in their respective industry. The topic we are discussing today is more about data growth, which is much talked about in the data center world. But we are seeing that even embedded applications in last 5 years or a decade or so are seeing unprecedented growth of data. And often, the world debates this data should be more economically kept at the cloud, or it needs to be kept at the edge for certain application. Then there is also, whenever there's a growth of data and we are storing the data, wherever it is, there's also concerns raised about the security of this data. So our panelists will discuss some of these topics today in various embedded applications. And I would actually go to Anup first. So Anup, with your experience in developing embedded products, how do you see, the what is causing this massive data growth at the devices level or in the embedded applications?
Good evening, good morning, everybody. We in Hero are excited to be in this IoT space. There is a significant adoption, let's call it an explosion of use cases and data in the IoT space as we see. And this is, as Vivek has correctly told, in India specifically, in the last few years, we have seen this adoption significantly happening both in consumer and enterprises. These products are like IP cameras, sensors, controllers, automotive trackers. And what has really driven this, the way we look at it, is essentially good, excellent infrastructure support, Wi-Fi, broadband, LTE, which has enabled all these use cases. When we talk about data and huge data, while you have sensors and controllers and even automotive, giving a lot of data which needs to be processed, but there is also video. Video is essentially a very big driver in the space, and this is where mostly my company is focused on, which is security and surveillance. Now, this is digital compressed video coming from multiple thousands and hundreds and thousands of cameras. What they do essentially is provide users incident reports, get a sense of security in place. Now, while this adoption of these devices has increased, one question which has come is, which Vivek also correctly pointed out, is what do you do with this data and what's the best place to process the data? There is no straightforward answer to this. I think it's a mix of edge and cloud. Both have their own pros and cons, and we'll probably discuss as we go on with this conversation. Yeah.
Thank you, Anup. Yeah, let me move over to Kalpesh. Kalpesh, you also have a long experience with designing embedded systems. And in my experience, just about a decade back, when we were looking at microcontroller-based systems, we were talking about the embedded flash that's available in microcontroller to optimize the system. And if the systems today have video and it's generating, massive amount of data, then how do you see the challenges as a designer of cost optimizing these devices in terms of, massive requirement for the data storage and where it's heading to in the future?
Yeah, see, primarily we see data demands or the maximum data requirement has came from primarily because of a technology advancement, right? Sensor technology has advanced a lot, and now lot of important informations, right? We are able to capture it as a part of analog to digital conversion, right? And in terms of microprocessor or microcontroller technologies, right, we are seeing a lot of advancement on those technologies, right? And because of that, it is possible that, processing this all sensor data, right? And, this both the technological advancement primarily have allowed, more and more embedded device to be deployed, right? And and if you see the implementation point of view, right, that we found lot of embedded device in smart buildings, manufacturing floors, cars, and even home, right? And if we compare it, right, couple of years ago, it was a one devices per person, right? And now that has been increased to at least 5 embedded devices per person, in last 5 years, right? And from embedded market size also, if you see, right, the market size, exceeded, USD $100 billion in 2019, and it is predicted to grow at a CAGR of 6% in next 5 years, right? So those have enabled the number of devices in the market and data gathering capability, right? Now, as you asked, right, that how can we embedded devices can have a memory density which is required by the sensor, right? So, embedded devices as always will have a challenge because it requires a specific form factor, specific environmental conditions, such as temperature, vibrations. It has specific life cycle requirement also, from 2 years to up to 10 years. And of course, the cost of the devices, right? So primarily, it's like a combination of all these things which will decide the memory density which goes into the embedded device, right? If we see current embedded device, I would categorize the memory into a two-part. One is that fixed storage, right, which primarily driven by the NAND flash or non-flash or the embedded the multimedia card. We call it a eMMC, right? And there are removable, memory devices, which is primarily, I would say, SD card, micro SD card, or M.2 SSD, right? Now there is a limitation of this device is that how big memory it can provide, but we are seeing a technological advancement in memory technological also, and we are seeing that capacities are increasing, as we progress to the new technological domains. Yeah.
Thank you, Kalpesh, for that insight. Let me move over to Raghavan. Raghavan, you represent a space where you are providing embedded processors for the devices, connected and embedded devices. And in your experience, what kind of changes or use cases or applications you are seeing in last couple of years, that are catering to these massive data growth, massive processing at the device level, so on and so forth?
Yeah, thanks, Vivek. So as we all know today, our lives are more online than offline, right? So the internet has changed how we lead our life completely. Take it education, take it entertainment. Now all the channels what we watch on set-top box is OTT. It's coming over the internet. Could be high surveillance camera security. Also, how do we purchase things? It's all online, e-commerce. You don't go to the grocery store down the road and buy your stuff. You just order online for the convenience. So the whole lifestyle education has changed. How we work at offices have changed. Smart city deployments are accelerating IoT growth. So with all the changes in the real world, there is a huge unprecedented data growth. In order to support this unprecedented data growth, we need the back-end infrastructure. Unless until we have the backbone or the infrastructure right, we will not be able to support the consumers to access the internet and download or upload the data as in when they want to. It could be YouTube or it could be social networking, Facebook, WhatsApp, LinkedIn, all sorts of technologies, right? Applications and technology. So what we do at MediaTek is we have the cutting edge products which power the devices which provide the access to the consumer to the internet. It could be the 4G now and 5G. We have already launched several devices. Wi-Fi 5 was longer than 3 years back. Now Wi-Fi 6. We have already announced Wi-Fi 7 availability in 2023. Right? And previously the broadband was copper broadband. Now all the companies have started offering fiber broadband because I need 300 Mbps, 500 Mbps, 1 Gbps of data through. There are several people at home now working from home, studying from home, right? Cybersecurity and surveillance applications. There are many more such applications which is demanding the backend infrastructure to be stable. And also for today's session, right, we are doing an online virtual event. There are several thousands of events happening globally. So the entire lifestyle has changed and everything is going online. So that's what I want to say that we need the backend infrastructure and the right devices to support the internet.
Okay. So Raghavan, your voice was not very clear, and I got the message from other participants also about it. So I'll summarize what you said. I think what you said was the improved infrastructure at the back end, and also the technology evolution, like Wi-Fi evolving from Wi-Fi 5 to Wi-Fi 6, and improved bandwidths are leading to massive data growth. But when we come back to you a couple of minutes later, just see if you can improve your volume or speak closer to the microphone so that you are better audible. But thanks for now. So let me now move on to Naresh. Naresh, you represent the world that's providing, the data infrastructure requirements to the embedded world. So now, looking at various challenges of data growth in embedded application, how are you guys getting geared up to provide the right optimized, right cost solutions for the embedded application for data storage?
Yep, Vivek. So let me talk about data first because we are into data infrastructure. So we always try to map the data. So like just in last decade, in 2010, the data created was around 1.2 zettabytes. And in 2020, IDC said the data is approximately 64 zettabytes, which is like 50 times growth. And the two major growth drivers were first was the mobile phone and the second one was security and surveillance. So you'll be surprised to know like in mobile phones, there are 13 applications which have more than 5 billion plus downloads and around 58 applications which have 1 billion plus downloads like Facebook, WhatsApp and so many other gaming applications. So this itself shows a lot of data growth in last 1 decade. However, in the future, in the next decade, the data growth will not be from humans and pieces, it will be machines. So, and another point here is like right now, the edge and endpoints, only 10% of data is created at edge and endpoints and 90% is still created on the data center side. And these things will also change going forward, and it's predicted that 75% of data will be on the edges and endpoints in next 1 decade's time. So I'll say all embedded applications, even if the smaller applications like energy meters, water meters, drones, automotive clusters, so everywhere the memory and processing will increase in coming time. And regarding the Western Digital products, so we are building products for the storage, and there are only two type of products for storage. Zeros and ones can be stored either on hardest drive, which I don't think embedded applications will need because of its bulky size and higher power consumption, although it's much cheaper. But the flash-based products like SD cards, eMMC, UFS, and Kalpesh mentioned about M.2 SSD. So these are the products which are going to have more and more capacities, higher and higher performance going forward to tap this growth potential. Vivek, you are on mute.
Thank you for reminding me that. So let me now come to another topic and let me go to Anoop again. So Anoop, as you are developing a lot of video applications here, and as you rightly said, video is a primary driver of massive, unprecedented data growth at the device level or at the edge level, and also, of course, at the data center level. So often, this debate comes up, building massive data centers and storing, large amount of data is obviously, more cost effective. But at the same time, in your applications such as video surveillance, what's your experience in storing data at the edge versus, pumping this data in the cloud, economics versus, latency versus cost effectiveness? I'd like to hear your comments on this.
So Vivek, we know like other technologies have been being a moving goalpost. While we are hearing of things like 4K and now also 8K and so on and so forth. What you have to realize is that when we talk about higher resolutions, they are essentially almost exponential when it comes to network usage. Now, the same thing the users experience in, let's say, while watching a movie or doing an OTT platform, the same experience for better surveillance and security is also coming in the devices. So these devices, which used to initially have the analog form factors, creating few kilobytes of video data, have moved on to 2K 4K kind of cameras, right? And as a result of which, let's take a scenario where you have a factory where you have to put hundreds of cameras, right? Hundreds of cameras on the lines, and then you need to monitor and then of course use it for forensic and incident reporting subsequently. Imagine this whole thick pipe going towards the cloud. These are infrastructures which are practically not practical even to deploy, right? So most of the use cases which are essentially enterprise, even home for that matter, the solution is always a mix of the edge, where you have devices which are called network storage devices, which store almost, let's say, 100% of the data. And then what now companies are doing, they are applying AI at the edge to essentially identify events and videos which are interesting and which needs to be backed up. And they are called as more priority data, which needs to be backed up in the cloud. So, so our experience practically is that it's always a mix. There are pros and cons in keeping in the edge versus the cloud. Cloud is something which is available anytime, even if the devices go offline or there's a fault with the devices, there's always backed up. But given the fact that the resolutions are higher, given the fact that you have hundreds of cameras deployed in a practical enterprise or industrial use case, it is imperative that the solution has to be a mix of edge and cloud. Cloud essentially taking backups of what we call as priority data. Okay.
And Anup, do you also provide storage at the camera level? Because sometimes network connection itself may break, and then
Yeah.
How do you handle that situation?
So all the cameras which we and a lot of our competition do, they always have the ability to insert an SD card. These are for the consumer cameras. In case of enterprise cameras, these cameras are connected through the enterprise LAN, not really the WAN side, to an entity called the network video recorder, which stores locally as the first instance of all video, ensuring that whatever happens, the backup is available either on the SD card or on the NVR. So these are now very Vivek, these are hygiene in products, and then the backup happens on the cloud, ensuring that even if there is a problem with the SD card or the device there's a theft or the device gets damaged, you have over a period of time important data stored back in the cloud. And specifically what we do in these cases is we use smart triggers, smart AI triggers. These are models which are run on the edge. For example, when you see a person or you see a pet or you see a automobile, car, etc. So these are we call as more interesting events, and we back up this specific video clips in the cloud to essentially give a sense of what happened during the day.
Sure, thank you, Anup. So that gives me a nice cue to move to Kalpesh, and I wanted to ask you, Kalpesh, what are the key technological advancements you're seeing in embedded application? Especially I'm more interested to know what's happening in terms of the AI, at the edge, or AI at the device level. What kind of algorithms, what kind of inferences are being drawn using AI at the device level. You seem to be on mute, Kalpesh.
Thank you. Okay. So yeah, this is a very, very interesting, right? As the technology is advancing, more and more powerful processors, right, from companies like MediaTek are coming in. Memory densities are also increasing, per chip or per area basis, like companies such as WDC. We are able to shrink, more power and more memory into the same devices, which essentially has allowed us to design an applications or enable the AI implementation at the device level, right? And there are a lot of applications nowadays which are coming up, right? Like all the AI smart surveillance system, right? That includes, but not limited to, like patient monitoring, like smart surveillance, and also a smart home camera such as Cubo, right? Like, let me give you an example of smart surveillance camera, right? So we are seeing that these cameras has many AI implementations, such as object detections, right? And if object is unattended, object missing, right? And also, as you want to monitor a specific area or specific door, you can create a virtual line, and if anyone crossing that line, the camera generates an alarm. All right. There are other applications also, right, that we have done it recently because of COVID, right? The camera has been deployed at the entry gate, and we were able to detect that the person is wearing a mask or not, right? And such kind of applications are nowadays possible because of AI, right? There are other implementations, in a larger area such as mall or airport, right? Where, a lot of AI implementations that we are doing, which detects like crowd densities, right? Queue management, and even the weapon detection such as gun and knife, right? There are other implementation also is in progress, which detects the overall behavior analysis of a person, right? So these are the AI implementations which has become a possible because of the memory density has increased the device, and also the powerful processor which are available, right? And other qualifications, which we are seeing is on automotive space, right? And we are seeing ADAS applications and surround view applications where 2 to 4 cameras are deployed in the car, right? Which monitors outside, it monitors lane detections, traffic signal detections, right? It also detects the pedestrians or bicycles or different kind of vehicles, right? And inform the drivers about any alarming conditions are provided. On the other side, there are inwards camera which detects the driver's conditions, right? Whether he is drowsy, he is on the mobile, or he is distracted by any event, right? And if those kind of conditions happens, it generates an alarm not only to the driver but also to the central locations, which is monitoring and managing this fleet, right? So we are seeing a lot of growth on AI implement. And these are just 2 applications, right? Other than that, there are other huge scenario in smart cities, in healthcare and in even in agriculture. We are seeing a lot of implementation of AI, right, which is happening on the edge, right, which is enhancing the capabilities and improving the performance, right, or productivity and efficiencies, right? So lot of AI implementation happening.
Yeah. Thank you for that insight, Kalpesh. So Anup, one of the challenges as a consumer I see is, although the RFID tag-based tolls have made life easy, but there at times I see QR codes or, these barcodes wearing out on the cars or camera not able to recognize and, causing a big pileup there. So any AI-based cameras you think will be coming out that will make life easy for us by fingerprint detection or any other means?
I personally believe RFID really is not a camera technology. However, I believe that cameras can accurately, and they've been deployed almost all over the world, can accurately detect the number plate. And we have now standardized number plate, the high security number plate, and using that information itself, all other backend can essentially connect all other things like wallets, RFID tags. So in my opinion, personal opinion, given the fact that the vehicles have a number plate, RFID probably was a redundant implementation in the first place. But yes, it's one good first step in making sure our national highways are monitored, tracked, and there are so many use cases which go beyond that.
I hope that comes, into the play in coming future and make our life more convenient. So Raghavan, coming to you now with all these applications we discussed, massive amount of data that's coming up, I think security becomes one big concern there. So when you do edge processing or embedded device processing, what are the security related measures that you or other semiconductor or embedded processor companies are taking care of?
Yeah, sure, Vivek. So as I said previously, the entire life is going offline to online. Everybody is sharing their personal data. It could be bank details, password, PAN, including all your family member details. So there are three kinds of security what we generally look at. One is the data privacy. Second one is the data security. And the third one is the security at product level. So essentially a product compromises of hardware, a microprocessor, memory, and all these sensors integrated. Then the underlying software, it could be Android or Linux or any other operating system are sitting on the product itself. So what we look at is all the product companies definitely look at all these three angles. One, the security at the product level itself. So once I say product level, it compromises on the chip, it compromises on the software. So what do we do at the chip level? So chip level or the semiconductor level, what we call as, not just MediaTek, most of the companies who play in this domain, they offer various security features. To name a few, it could be secure boot, it could be RSA, it could be DES, it could be triple DES, various kind of encryption technologies. And it could be also the tamper detection. Some of the products where we use our debit card and credit card details, we still need tamper detection where the entire product gets tampered. Maybe even the IP surveillance camera for that matter. So this is at the hardware level security. Then comes the software level security, which is predominantly taken care by the operating system vendor. It could be Android, it could be Microsoft, or it could be QNX, or it could be various other operating system companies where they have the security layer itself in their 7 layers. Right? We call it the security layer. So that security layer will take care of all the security aspects at the product level. So now once I design the product, there are billions of devices which are internet connected in the field, generating zeta billion, as Naresh said, few billions of data every second, right? Now I store it on the cloud or on the edge. So when I store it on the edge, we need the memory where I do reading and writing in an encrypted way. So once I read into the memory and read out of the memory and write into the memory, I use a particular encryption technique where a hacker cannot access the data. So this is still at the product level. Now going back to the cloud or the server level, there are various technologies available right from SanDisk and Western Digital where they take care of the security at the server level and including the product companies who design the server, ensuring that the hacking and the theft of data or the data steal is least or the minimum these days. Then comes the data privacy. So data privacy is essentially the ownership of the company who stores the data in the cloud, right? So this data privacy policies, everybody are aware. Nobody is supposed to share the individual personal data to an outside world without his consent, right? So this is the data privacy aspect. So to summarize, all these semiconductor companies, including MediaTek, who offer processors or the memory, and our ecosystem partners who provide operating system, ensure that there is end-to-end security for the data which is on the internet.
Okay. Thanks, Raghavan. Good to know because putting more and more software security in a embedded device, given the limited amount of storage and everything, may be a challenge. So hardware encryption in the processor or as a co-processor, I think, is always useful there. Let me also ask the same question to Naresh. So Naresh, most of the data is stored in the eMMC flash or SD card or micro SD card or SSD in one of these formats. So is there a level of security, embedded security that's provided in the storage devices as well?
Yes, of course, Vivek. I think we also call ourselves as a data security company because data is so precious to every company and all of us. In fact, one thing which Raghavan said, like building security blocks, for example, crypto algos and some security protocols. So that's must in hardware level. But apart from that, we are also building some self-encrypting drives so that data is unreadable if somebody stores that data. And second important thing is like we also give some host lock features to all of the storage devices. For example, in any IP cam, if somebody takes out the card, or in NVR or DVR, somebody takes out our SSD. So he will not be able to access the data because that SSD or that SD card is locked to the host or that camera or that drive. So these are the two. And apart from security, I think protection is also very important. you might have heard of the bit flip issues coming up in embedded, especially in the automotive, which is a cause of concern. For example, 0 will convert to 1 or 1 will convert to 0 just because of some radiations and all. So we also take care of this bit flip protection through hardware and some error corrections on our devices. And the third thing is on the, apart from security, reliability also a concern. So when we build the flash memory cell, we try to build a very robust cell so that the electrons do not leak out from that memory cell and cause data errors. So yes, security is very important for Western Digital like of companies.
Yeah, thank you, Naresh. So, gentlemen, we are moving into the last 5 to 7 minute section of this discussion. So, let me go to the last round of questions. So, Anup, coming to you, we discussed at length, what's happening right now and in the past. So, let's peek into the future a bit. So, I think we are hearing that 5G auctions and spectrum allocations may take place early next year in India. So, how do you think the data landscape or the ability, at the devices will change with 5G, once it's implemented in India as well?
Vivek, this is what we are all waiting for. 5G is a game changer, and there's no two ways about it. It essentially allows embedded devices to become standalone and almost DIY. Just imagine you buy a camera. It has its own eSIM kind of infrastructure. You power it on, and you're on, right? And you can take this camera, power it on anywhere, right? So you don't have to work with Wi-Fi networks. It has inherent mobility which comes with it. So I think, and that's true for not just for cameras, it's true for sensors, this is true for controllers. I think 5G is going to be a game changer. It is going to give extreme mobility, thick pipes, catering to, as I said, the trends are moving away. People are not satisfied by doing standard definition or SIF kind of surveillance camera information coming in. They're now looking at 2K, 4K kind of thing, and 5G is actually going to enable it. Having said that, still, it's very imperative that as the compute and the storage of the devices go up, it's important for devices to become like a sieve, which means that instead of sending tons of noisy data, it needs to still have the devices itself have to have enough computing to make sure what is the correct set of data which really needs to be presented to the backend. Otherwise, we'll see an explosion of data processing happening at the backend. But 5G, I think this is going to be a game changer for India for sure.
So as a consumer, I'm looking forward to, laptops with 5G eSIM built in and to be connected all the time when we travel. And when the laptop finds Wi-Fi, automatically switches to Wi-Fi to save the cost. And then when it is out of Wi-Fi, automatically switches to 5G. But all the time connectivity, basically.
Yeah.
Okay, coming to you, Kalpesh, since we are doing a lot of work in IoT area, how do you see the world of IoT changing once the 5G is available widely through our country and around the world?
Yeah, as Anup mentioned, that 5G is a game changer. We are seeing a lot of applications that currently in implementations, right, which are waiting for 5G so that overall efficiency and productivity, what they are doing it currently will be increased multiple times, right? I give you example of smart cities or smart agricultures, right? Or healthcare, right? A lot of developments or AI enablement is happening, right? And every enablement is looking forward for the 5G, right? People are thinking, doing something right away, right now, and then hoping that once the 5G will be here, it will, the implementation or the efficiency or the productivity will go multifold, right? So we are hoping for tremendous growth, and improvement or enhancement, and on each and every area of use case or applications, right? With 5G, in place, right? And that would have a massive impact overall, not only on the electronics, I would say, but day-to-day life, right? As you said, right, the laptop having a SIM, right? Similarly, healthcare professional is having a remote diagnosis capability, right? There are a lot of applications that we are doing, right? Surgeon assisting, remote patients, right? Those kind of applications will have a lot of improvement with 5G in place. Similarly, other huge things that we are seeing is that smart agricultures, right? Lot of development that is happening currently has hope that when 5G in place, it will improve the overall productivity and efficiency. So yeah, definitely huge hope, I would say, that we are banking on 5G. Yes.
So I think, Kalpesh, interestingly, you mentioned healthcare, and we saw during COVID first and second wave, how hospital infrastructure was stressed. And if we have improved networking infrastructure, bandwidth infrastructure, a lot of healthcare can be provided at home. So I think that could be boon in the future.
That could be.
Raghavan, quickly coming to you, since we are pressed for time now. How do you see the devices such as smartphone or tablets or laptop, etc., changing with 5G coming in, built into these devices in next year?
Yeah, sure. So you brought up a very good question. 5G is a building block of our company, right? So the mobile phones, laptops, and tablets, including the connected PC, which you just now spoke about, we have already announced a partnership with Intel where laptops are always connected with the 5G modem built in. So how does change is, let us take the example of mobile phone, right? So mobile phone becomes more tech savvy. The latency to the cell is very minimal, and you can have bandwidth of up to 500 Mbps, 1 Gbps uplink and downlink. So essentially, the video download, right? So you can download a movie, a full-fledged 700 MB movie within a few seconds of time. So not just movie, right? So people who are avid gamers, so you can have multiple people gaming online using a 5G mobile phone. Or it could be educate, right? Today, most of the students are doing online education, remote education. So they could have an in-class experience sitting at home using a tablet or using a computer doing an online education. Last but not least, people are talking about the much AR and the VR, right? Augmented reality and virtual reality. So 5G is going to make this real, right? So you could participate in a live event sitting at home using an VR glasses for that matter. So bottom line, 5G is going to impact all the industry, and it's going to be a huge impact on the economy. Let us wait and watch. 2022, 2023 is the year for 5G in India, and the entire industry is going to change because of 5G. Trust me.
Thanks, Raghavan.
Absolutely.
This time your voice was much more clear. You are beating the poor network with your strong voice. So thank you for that, putting that effort. And Naresh, coming to you. Automotive, I think autonomous car is not much talked about in last few years, and though we have not seen autonomous drive, cars successfully yet, but I think by 2025, autonomous cars will be on the road, at least in some part of the world, maybe North America, some part of Europe, and some level of autonomous cars will get deployed in India as well.
Yes.
And one report that I saw that autonomous cars might generate up to 4 terabyte of data per day. So I think that's a humongous amount of data, to be stored in the car, which is today mostly running on microcontrollers or at the most some eMMC drive. So how do you see this autonomous automotive infrastructure, coming up in coming years?
Yeah. Yeah. So Vivek, in like last couple of years back, it was just 8 gig or 16 gig in the entire car. And it is estimated that today it's approximately 1 terabyte inside any connected vehicle or car. And by 2025, it's going to be more than 4 terabytes. It is just about the memory inside the car. But what is going to happen is, like right now, the architecture of the car is like distributed. There are hundreds of controllers with hundreds of memory chips inside. With 5G and all this connected vehicle mobility, I don't think it's going to sustain. So the entire car architecture has to change. It has to be a centralized, unified architecture where you have, instead of 100 MCUs, you can have just few zonal big processors which can create vertical virtual machines. And also, instead of CAN, LIN, or flex array, you need to have an Ethernet as the backbone of the networking. All the storage in multiple components, we need to have a shared storage which is based on NVMe SSDs. So what I'm talking here is like, I'm talking about a data center. So data center has a compute, networking, and storage. So same way that the car will be like a mini data center on the wheels. So that is expected when the more and more connectivity comes to the cars.
So idea of a large central processor in the car with, virtual machine being carved out of it sounds very exotic. But at the same time, we have to take care of, the failure domains, etc. in the car. Today, hundreds of small CPUs are, creating safe failure domains there. But it's interesting, very, very interesting discussion from all of you. We are over time now. I wish we had more time, but in interest of time, we'll have to, close this panel discussion. But I really want to thank all our panelists, starting with Anup for your insightful information on 5G, AI, and camera-based application, and to Kalpesh for sharing his insights and applications on healthcare, particularly. Raghavan, to you for the media processing and also for the security application, and Naresh, to you for storage perspective on this humongous amount of data that all these machines will be creating in the future. With that, we like to conclude this panel and open up for some small Q&A for the audience based on the time available for the organizers. Thank you, guys, and thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you all for that wonderful discussion. I think you pretty much encompassed a lot about data. All the discussions around the explosivity of data itself. And I think, Anup, you mentioned how there is a need for us to sieve the data to make sure, we don't just get a massive explosion, but actually have relevant data and figure out a way to filter it. There are multiple questions which have come by, but I'm afraid we have very little time, so we will take only a few questions for this panel. I will first start with a question which has come from the audience. This question is, of course, specific to hardware, but let me just read it out so it is directly from the audience. The question goes like this, and I'm sure the panel can basically comment on it. The question is, are there potential opportunity for secure provisioning at the chip level? I'm sure this question is kind of relevant to what Kalam said also, but also I think there were some answers which Kalpesh also talked about, and all of you referred to security, privacy, but we know that there is going to be an explosion at the edge. What happens when the chip level design itself happens? Is there an opportunity at the hardware level to look at more complex provisioning, whether it's through AI or other technologies? Over to you.
Okay. Brijesh and Sunil, I think Raghavan is having some technical trouble there. Can you guys help to unmute him? I wanted.
Sure, we are working on that.
Okay.
Anup, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Thank you.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted Raghavan to, being from a processor company, to take that question. But Raghavan is currently on mute and is unable to unmute himself.
So
We can hear from
I can, if he's not there, I would like to take this question.
Yeah, Anup, go ahead. Let's hear your perspective on this question.
So it's very important that at the edge, right, you don't want your entire service, let's say specifically a car, to be hijacked by hackers and even firmware changing the behavior. So semiconductor companies have invested in what are known as trust zones for quite some time, right? And now these are also becoming relevant for IoT kind of use cases. So where did trust zones come from? You see it in all of your mobile. Now, because mobile has your own personal data, and these mobile chips have multiple trust zones where your data is secured and is under multiple levels of authorization and authentication. Same technologies as clusters on the chip have been also adopted for IoT-based use cases. As it's clear that whether it's enterprise, home, maintaining the privacy, ensuring that the service is not hijacked, is imperative.
So these are things which are there, and and as we go forward, they will be better because as the number of use cases come increase, the exposure to compromise also increase.
Vivek, do you want to
Yeah.
want me to take a call on this as well?
Yes, yes, Raghavan, go ahead. Good to know
Okay.
that you're unmuted now. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. Sunil mentioned that the question from audience was, is there a secure provisioning possible at the chipset level? The answer is yes. And today, all the chip companies are providing this as a service. So based on the security aspects you want to enable on the chipset level, one is the chipset, as Anup rightly mentioned, you need to have these intellectual property building blocks inside the chipset itself. And once you have these building blocks, how do I enable is provided as a service to a consumer or an end customer. So today, secure provisioning is a service and it comes at a cost. And based on the security level of your product, you will choose to avail this service based on the secure provisioning aspects of the chipset.
Thank you, Raghavan.
Yeah, Vivek, let me also add here, Western Digital has also one of the founding members of a project Open Titan. So this project is specifically for Silicon root of trust, so that in future we can have an inspectable architecture on the chip side. So that's a way forward to go on the security perspective.
Okay. Great to know that level of trust being added to storage devices as well, besides the processors. Sunil, can you see any other questions?
Yeah, there's just one more question on the technical part. There has been reference to AI and its impact on data edge. There was a question around what is the implication of quantum computing and quantum cryptography? Does that have any implication? Data itself. Is there any work that any of you are?
So, Anup or Kalpesh, would you like to take a tab at quantum computing?
Vivek,
So-
it was not clear. Can you repeat the question?
Yeah. So the implications of quantum computing on data, does it have any implications? Are any companies looking at it right now? Any of your companies?
So I can answer that right now. The answer is no. We are not looking at it. We are studying it very carefully. Quantum compute infrastructure and the server farms right now, as we understand, are at the data centers. What they allow you to do is, I think during our seminar, someone mentioned that the car generates 1 terabyte of data, right? Now, what quantum compute does and the algorithms around it do is allow you to interpret this data faster, primarily because they are not bits and bytes. The entire quantum computation doesn't work on bits and bytes, decision trees, and so on and so forth. It is essentially what it means, that you can actually do multiple decisions at the same time from a in quantum compute. So it allows you to inspect data, interpret data, and also make detection, prediction faster, right? But yeah, and right now, at least we as a company are not working on it.
I think most of the places I've also heard this is more of a lab projects at the moment and not so much commercial deployment. I had a question for Naresh. He used the term zettabyte, and I think many people in audience who are not in storage industry may not be able to fathom how many zeros followed by one that term has. So would you like to explain that?
You're mute.
Can't hear you, Naresh. You have to unmute.
So zettabyte is approximately the number of stars in the whole universe. But of course, the designers will not like this answer. They want to be like exact, like accurate, like what it is. So let me start from gigabyte. I think from gigabyte, you add 3 zeros, you get terabytes. Keep on adding 3 zeros, you get petabytes. Add another 3 zeros, you get exabytes. And then adding 3 zeros, you get zettabytes, which is like 10 raised to the power 21. And in fact, there is another, if you add further 3 zeros, you will get yottabytes. I think that's what this
Okay.
is.
Okay, thank you for explaining that. And I had another last question. I think this question is, Anup, probably is to you. You are part of Hero Electronics. You guys are homegrown Indian company trying to build electronics product for India market. So do you come across this dilemma that, you invest in R&D, develop products, have a cycle time, source component in difficult times like this, then go market those products versus you go to China, source the ODM products, brand them Hero Electronics and sell it. And how does the economics versus other things work in this scenario?
Okay, so for everything, even in business, there's a short-term view and a long-term view. And fortunately for me and my team and the group we represent, Cubo, Hero has decided to take a long-term view of things. What and this long-term view helps us to build competence. It helps us to create innovation. Helps us to solve problems which are relevant in Indian scenarios. Uh, all of this won't be there if you take a short-term view. You just take a product from China, quickly customize it, take it to market. Yes, speed of R&D, business is business, so you need to make money, right? So while there is a long-term view, there's a lot of pressure on us to also turn around and be as efficient as China. So when you say Make in India is not a compromise. Make in India is getting the best of the world at the best prices, and for that you need teams, you need commitment, and you need effort. I don't think Indian companies lack it. Vividian is one good example of that. Kalpesh is sitting there. But this is what we have to perfect. It's a long journey, but I think once you have decided that this is the path you have to take, if you put the right effort and hard work, it will happen. And we see that happening for
Thank
us.
you. Yeah. Thanks, Anup. So all of us here at ISA and all of us who work in semiconductor industry like that approach of designing in India and then manufacturing in India as well. With that, gentlemen, thanks a lot for your time. I think very interesting insights and discussion. Thank you, Anup. Thank you, Kalpesh. Thank you, Naresh. Thank you, Raghavan. And thank you, Sunil, for hosting and helping us getting through this panel. And
Thank you
thanks
once
to the
again.
audience for all those who listen to us.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Vivek and team.
Thank
Thank you
you.
very much.
Bye.
Thank you, audience.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
With that, we will move on to our next session. This session is focused on fabless semiconductors and fabless semiconductors in ESDM. If we look at the overall theme of this seminar, been focused on we can accelerate ESDM growth over the next decade in India and otherwise. And one of the key aspects that we are looking at today will be around what is the impact of fabless semiconductors, the design aspect in taking things to success. And as part of this, we would like to welcome Mr. Lior Seedham, who's basically from the company Mobileye. Just to introduce him briefly, Lior is basically Vice President